Does the root account always have UID/GID0? On all the Linux systems I've managed, the root account has a GID and UID of 0. Is this guaranteed, or is it possible that the system will give root a different ID?
There are actually two parts to your question. Does the super user account always have UID/GID00 on Linux? Yes. As is pointed out by Rich Homolka in a comment, there's code in the kernel which explicitly checks for UID0 when needing to check for the root user, which means that root always has at least UID0. Is the name of the user account with UID0 always root? No. Root is just a name, listed in /etc/passwd or some other authentication store. You could just as well call the account admin, and the OS itself won't care, but some applications might not quite like it because they expect there to exist a privileged account named root. Calling the UID0 account on a Nix root is a very strongly held convention, but it isn't required by the system, though it may be required by certain userland software, possibly including system administration utilities. It's also worth noting that, as pointed out by Simon Richter, on BSDS there often exists a second UID0 account, by convention named tour, which is root spelled backwards, and also lexically comes after root in a list sorted alphabetically. For example, Freebsd uses it to provide a root user with a customized shell setting, leaving the root user with a default shell which is guaranteed to exist on the system's root partition, useful for recovery purposes.
One, the administrator is always with == 0. This is coded in the kernel. It would take some coding in the kernel to change this. There's not much point to this, so it's not done. For example, it would be inconsistent for other Unixes sharing the same NFS, for example. 2. UID0 does not necessarily map to root. The best example is Freebsd. It has two UID == 0 accounts, the difference being the shell. Root has shell/bin/sh, which is a simple shell, useful for when your disks are bad and you need fsck/user. Toy uses tcsh, which is much more useful in non-emergency situations, since it has things like history, etc. Another, more personal example, one job I had where they had a root equiv, UID = 0, account over NIS. The password, blank. Because the new sysadmin couldn't remember the root password on the machines. I yelled about this for obvious reasons. NIS passwords by definition cannot hide their blankness. I was not happy about this account. And it really isn't the system that gives UID0 is root, it's you. You change this by using password files, or other naming directories, NIS, lab, but it's not compiled in. Though you should have at least one UID0 account in /etc/passwd, since you may not have networking when you really need it. So root is always UID0, but UID0 is not necessarily always root.
Well, for systems that use the nonstop server, root_UID is not 0 but 65535. OS users and groups. The OS environment does not provide common Unix default usernames and user IDs unless they are explicitly created by a site administrator. However, equivalent OS usernames and user IDs do exist. For example, the privileges normally associated with the Unix username root and the user ID of 0 exists for the OS user ID, UID, of 65535, the super ID, which is the user super and its aliases. See this URL. In core utils, you can find that root UID.h header file.
If you want to support the channel, please consider subscribing.